This is Gardening in America, and I'm Ed Hume. Today we're in the state of Washington. We're at Hummingbird Farm, and I'm with Leslie Johnson. Leslie, whereabouts is Hummingbird Farm?
Ed, it's on the north end of Whidbey Island, which is in Puget Sound in Washington State, and we're just a couple miles from Oak Harbor.
And you specialize primarily in perennials, don't you?
Yes, we do, and all kinds of ornamental plants, but particularly perennials.
What part of the garden are we in here?
Right now we're in the main display garden, close to the entrance, and it's surrounded by a distinctive blue fence. And we have a number of different beds that feature lavender, different kinds of herbs, fun color combinations, that kind of thing.
And then over kind of behind me here's another garden.
That's right. We call that the cottage garden, and that has 4 different sections: a hummingbird section, a butterfly section, a white section called the moon garden, and a section devoted to fragrant flowers.
You know, Leslie, is what I think is really nice for the home gardener here is that you have all the plants labeled. And in so many cases, they're mature plants. Mm-hmm. So although they may buy a little tiny plant, when they get it home, they know what it's going to be in size. And that's really
right.
important, isn't it?
That's right. And we find it really helps people to see what the plant looks like. Because when they're in pots, sometimes they're not blooming. They don't look like they're full, mature size.
Now tell me one other thing, and that is that you folks do some drying of flowers. Mm-hmm. Can you just, in general terms, give us 2 or 3 hints on how to dry flowers, perennials or whatever?
Well, you need to cut them at just the right time, and different flowers have different times to cut them, and a book can really help you learn that.
Oh, okay.
And having some sort of extra heat to get the flowers dried quickly often really helps, and especially in our moist, sometimes cool climate, a dehumidifier also can really help, but it's not really necessary if you've got a warm, dry place.
Now at home, I know my wife very often cuts flowers and hangs them upside down. Is that basically what we're talking about, only with some form of creating heat too?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it, and we keep them in the dark so they don't lose their color.
Oh, that's a good hint for our viewers as well. Now, the important thing also is that you are open all 12 months of the year?
Pretty much. We anticipate being maybe closed in January while we'll be doing a lot of propagating of our plants,
okay.
But the rest of the time we'll be open because there's almost always something to see in the garden.
Thanks very much for sharing the gardens with us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The shrubs that I planted in this area are doing just great, but the annuals that I added for summer color are not really doing well at all. And it's late in the season, so I shopped at about 3 different garden centers and found these plants for a nice, bright, sunny area. Although it's shady here right now, it's sunny during most of the day. And this is a very important area because it's right off the patio area. So what I'm going to do is to take these plants and just add them where I think they might be nice. Now the beauty of that is to first lay them out is that you can always move them if you find a more suitable location. I'm going to use a couple geraniums in here, and I used that yellow marigold. And look at the very pretty dianthus, which will add a nice bit of fragrance as well. And then I'm going to just take a few of these others here and add them in different parts of this bed to add a little bit of color. The soil here is very poor, although I used topsoil. It's not of good quality, so I think that's why these annuals didn't do very well. I'm going to add a little bit of pink there and a little bit more yellow over in here. And then the chrysanthemums are coming on for fall color, so I'll just add one of them right over in here. And then the Dusty Miller with its gray foliage is going to be a great addition. And let's just put it in the bed right here. What I'll do is to just prepare a new soil. And when I say new soil, that's exactly what I mean. This topsoil, because it doesn't have much food value, really has got to be fortified. And what I've done in this particular case is I have mixed not only peat moss, processed manure, but I've also mixed into that some vermiculite and also some manure. So we've got a combination of just a little bit of everything to mix in with this soil that doesn't have much fertility at all. And I'm going to use a lot of it. And I'll mix it in like so, combine it really well, and then I'm ready to take the Dusty Miller out of the container. It has a pretty substantial root system, so there again we'll massage the roots just to loosen them. And of course we always do that. We don't bare root them, but we loosen them so that they can grow out into the surrounding soil. That's very, very important. And remember, that's the back side of the plant, that's the front, whoops, there's the front side of the plant. So we want to be sure we have front side forward, and we'll just pull in. I'm going to use just a little bit more of this around again, simply because we need the fertility in the soil. See, so you can add color even this late in the season to make a nice bright spot of color in your garden. Here are a few tools that you can use in the garden to make your gardening a little less stressful. How often, maybe we have a sore back, or have just spent a lot of time in the garden, or have been doing other projects and need a little bit of help. Well, tools like this is called the border shears. It's often used for edging along the border of the lawn and the flower and shrub beds. And you can stand up without bending over at all, and does a very nice job of providing that border. Here's another great tool. This is a weed puller, and without bending over, once again, you can surround the weed and pull it out very, very easily. This is yet another type of weed puller. It's called the Weed Hound. And again, the prongs surround the weed. You step on it, pull up the handle, and out comes the weed very, very easily. And these make weeding in small areas, particularly where you only have a weed here and there, say in the lawn area. It makes it very easy to pull them out. In larger areas, you'll find this one very, very handy. This is the winged weeder, and it does an excellent job of removing all kinds of weeds and grasses in flower and shrub beds and other areas of the landscape. And here's a new type that's very easy also to use for that spot weed in your lawn. It's called the Precision Weeder, and actually you insert it in the soil, pull it back, and it actually pulls the weed right back out of the lawn area. An easy tool to use. And when it comes to pruners, there's several different types, but this is an especially easy one to use. And the important thing is it's a ratchet type pruning shears. So if you have any pain in your hands at all, it makes it, you do several very easy pullbacks, and it does an easy job of cutting a branch. If you have some branches high in a tree that need pruning, this is the ideal pole type pruner to use. And if you've got hanging baskets that are high and it's hard to reach to water them, or you have to reach out over an area to water, this is an excellent device to use. And there are several different types of them. I particularly like this type of a trowel because of its long handle, and also because of the sponge grip. It makes it very easy to use and easy to handle. And one of the best tools in my garden, combinations of tools, is this one here. That's the straight edge shovel. I've used it, in fact, right along the edge here to make the border for this edge stone, because it makes a very straight border, and it can be used in many parts of the garden. These are just a few of the tools that will put less strain on the body, but at the same time do a good job. Every now and then I like to update you on the garden. And this is an area that was a lawn when we moved in 3 years ago. But we had to walk 100 feet from the car down to the home. And so instead we put in a parking area with gravel. Now, what I've done also is to make separation between the gravel and the beds. And I used the Roman stack stone to do that. But first I made the drawing in the house on a piece of paper. Then I brought the garden hose out and stretched it out and then ended up with the final design. And the only breaks would be like to go into the greenhouse, which you'll see in a minute. But this is also the time of the year when I like to see you make notes of some of the plants in the garden that are really doing well. Let's say the stars of the garden. And here's one of them. This beautiful pink petunia is a variety called the wave petunia. And the waves are doing really well in my garden. And also notice here, this is a variety of verbena. It's a half-hardy annual, but it's a variety called Purple Homestead, or Homestead's Purple. It's very, very pretty. You can see how it's coming over the edge very nicely. The fringe flower here is just doing really well. This is a plant that's evergreen and has that beautiful reddish foliage and then the kind of purplish, or I'd say more magenta flowers on it. Very, very attractive. And then this area I developed is a heather area, but I also put in some of the annuals to provide a little bit of color. And you can very often do that where you have evergreens in the garden. Just brighten it up a little bit with a few annuals. I use color spots in those particular cases. Notice the pathway then into the greenhouse, so it breaks up, and you'll notice all the edges are curved and they are all recessed because we're going downhill. You don't want to make it all downhill. You want to make everything level. And that's exactly what we've done here. Look again, the beautiful petunias. These are fragrant. And very often, we don't look at that. We should look at petunias that are fragrant, and those are the ones we should use in the garden. Very nice variety. Another pink wave variety back in here. More varieties of verbenas. There's a lot of new ones coming on the market, and I've been testing them, and these are a couple of them. Foliage is beautiful. The flower is a little bit smaller and it's a little bit more compact in its growth habit. And of course, back in here, you can see I've used the thyme very nicely. And I had to raise this whole area, the beds, because the actual soil level is lower back there. So see, you can create all kinds of things with a little bit of imagination, a pen and a piece of paper, and then come on out, bring the garden hose, and you can outline your bed so beautifully. So I hope that gives you an idea, kind of updates you maybe on a few things that we're doing in our garden. As you can see in this part of the garden, the perennials are pretty well finished flowering. So I'm going to add some new ones, and here are just a few ideas of the plants that I'll be adding. For example, this is a gorgeous variety of Coreopsis daisy, and you can see how prolific flowering it is. Now let me just take that away for a second and show you the one here in the garden, because this has been pretty for weeks as well. It's really a very nice combination of kind of an orange or almost brown color and the yellow. Now the important thing always with these perennials in the garden is that you take the time to cut off the dead spent flowers, and then they'll flower for a longer period of time. Coreopsis is a great one, and this is another one I'll add further down the garden. Look at this one. We've talked a lot about spirea, and this is a one that does exceptionally good in the shade. And deep back further in this bed, we have some shady spots, so this is one that's going to go in. It's an Astelbe variety called Sprite. Very, very pretty, very low growing, and you can see what a prolific flowering variety it is, but they like to be protected from the hot midday sun. Now up here I have two different varieties of sedums. In fact, these are called the blood sedums. And this one is called tricolor here, or stone crop actually is the name, but it has a tricolor leaf. In fact, if you look very closely on the leaf, you'll see the green, you'll see cream, and you'll see a tinge of red almost. It's rose in color. So you have the three colors. That's where it gets its name tricolor. And then this is the true dragon blood, this particular one. And then look at this low growing ground cover, a great one to use in the garden. You can use it even between stepping stones if you want to. This is the low growing beautiful variety of ground cover. It's called the Blue Star Creeper. You can use it in so many different places in the garden. And look at the foliage and the flower on this one. This is called silver thyme. And of course it has the thyme fragrance as well, but flowers beautifully in the late summer and into the fall months as well. It is also a low-growing plant, and it likes full, hot, bright sun, so that's an ideal place in which to put it in the garden. Actually, all of these plants, except for the astelbe, need a bright, sunny spot in the garden. Here's another one now. This is also a succulent. Very, very pretty. It's called Sedum Autumn Joy. And of course it gets its name because it flowers a little bit later in the fall season, late summer and early fall. The color of the flower is kind of a cream to pink in color. It's very, very pretty, and you can see very prolific in its flowering habit. So these kind of plants used in the beds here behind me are really going to brighten up the bed for the rest of the summer season. And I think that's kind of nice if you can plan for all seasons in your garden too. Two of the attractive plants in our garden at this time of the year are the butterfly bush, Buddleia, and also the hydrangeas. They are our plants of the week. Let's start first with the beautiful butterfly bush. This is a plant that not only attracts butterflies to the garden, but also the very interesting hummingbirds. And of course it brings bees to the garden too for pollination purposes. This is a plant that grows in full, hot, bright sun. And here I have just 3 varieties. They come in a whole wide range of different varieties. And the interesting thing about the Buddleia bush is that there are now some dwarf varieties as well as the taller growing ones. Now this is one that I have up in the upper garden. Look how gorgeous the flower is on this. This plant is about 10 feet tall now. And the important thing, and the reason why I cut this, is after this main bloom is through, be sure to cut it off right there where my fingers are, and it will then, these other side branches will come into bloom, and this will bloom almost up until frost. So there are lots of varieties, and there are even some with variegated leaf varieties that you may want to consider. Full sun though in the garden, that's really important, and most of them lose their leaves over winter. Now let's also talk about the hydrangeas, and this is what's called a lace cap hydrangea. You'll notice that all the flowers here in the center are sterile. So there's only the ring of flowers around the outer edge. This one that I have in my hand, again from another bush in the garden, is one that's fully flowered. And they come in a wide range of colors, both of them. And the important thing here once again is a hydrangea is a plant that grows best in shade, where it's protected from the hot midday sun. You'll notice these are getting late afternoon sun, in fact. Great plants to include in the garden, and they're my choice as plants of the week for this week. The beautiful hydrangeas and also the butterfly bush, Buddleia. Next, let's talk about grasses, and I'm with Greg Twyman of Skylark Nursery. Greg, whereabouts is Skylark Nursery?
Skylark Nursery is just outside the city limits of Anacortes, approximately 15 miles west on Highway 20 from Burlington.
Yeah, and you're just north, of course, of Whidbey Island as well. How many different varieties of grasses do you grow?
I grow approximately 112 right now.
Oh, wow. This is a gorgeous variety. Tell me a little bit about it. The variegation is outstanding. Where would I plant that in the landscape?
I would put this under a large clump of evergreen trees. It likes to be in the shade, does very well in the shade. This is a hackone grass or Hackanacola. Wonderful ground covering grass and can be mass planted or, as you can see, a specimen.
How old is this plant?
This grass is approximately 6 years old. It's been in the field for 6 years.
You know, I just gathered together about 3 different varieties. I think very often our viewers don't realize how many different colors the grasses come in.
There's very many colors, shapes, and sizes.
Oh, they're beautiful. This low-growing blue one is particularly nice.
Yes, this is a new one we're carrying this year. This is called Festuca cinerea Blothink.
Oh, wow. How big will that get? How tall?
Approximately, out of the container, will grow about another 3.5 inches in a season.
Wow. And these different varieties now grow different heights. Again, I don't think the viewers realize that there's some very low, some very tall though as well.
Very tall, up to 20 feet tall, and icicle blue. It depends on, of course, the variety.
Now, you've used them in this particular landscape here around the pool. Tell us, do they need good drainage? What's the requirements of grasses?
A lot of grasses require good drainage. A lot of grasses require no drainage. It just depends. There's so many varieties out there. One thing with the ornamental grasses is that it takes absolutely no prep in order to plant your grass. A lot of plants, such as rhododendrons and azaleas, need a lot of prep work.
Sure.
Grasses need very little prep work, and they're a lot easier to maintain. This landscape, we never water this landscape.
Oh,
we
is that
never
right?
water the landscape out there either, unless we go maybe 60 or 70 days without any Mother Nature
Sure,
rain.
sure.
Then we'll go and give it a drink of water.
But it sounds to me then, Greg, that the home gardener needs to know a little bit about the different types of grasses to know whether they are dry or drought tolerant, or whether they're grasses that need a little bit of water.
There are grasses that need a lot of moisture, and but everybody in Washington State has those areas
Yes,
that
that's right.
are very wet,
Sure.
and we can get away with that. But some grasses require little or no water once established.
Oh, wow. Their grasses are absolutely beautiful, and thank you for sharing them with us.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much. That's all the time we have today. Hope you can join me at the same time again next time for Gardening in America.